Good evening, leaders, and welcome to this broadcast from the Executive Network. This week, we would be going on a series revisiting our earlier discussion on kingdom leadership, and the focus will be on biblical philosophy of leadership. This is going to be a multi-part series, so this is just the introduction of this series. Um, Hopefully, in the coming weeks, we'll be going deeper and deeper into the crux of this discussion. But before I go on, I'd like to welcome those who are joining us for the first time. We say a very warm welcome to you, and we are grateful that you've found out a bit of time to join us in this transformative session. In the last 2 weeks, we discussed about writing what we call a mission or vision statement. And I know that that's been a very helpful couple of sessions. So if you've started either writing or refining your existing mission statement, I want to congratulate you. And I also want to encourage you to put in a bit more effort because, like we said, that is a living document that you have right there in your hands or on your desk. So keep working at it and keep rewriting, keep writing it again, keep crafting it. And I'm sure it would be a process of growth for you. So I want to encourage you to keep doing that. In this particular series, we'll be really looking at a discussion that will really come to the root of our perspective on leadership. So please stay tuned and let's go on this series of transformation. Right, just one other piece of information. If you are coming to a platform for the first time, you can express your views and ideas by using the chat facility, which is located at the top right hand corner of your screen. So just click on that, and if you look down in the same area, you will see the space where you can type in your comments, your ideas. If you want to share your views or any other suggestion you want to pass across to us, we encourage you to do that, and that will be really helpful for us. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to go on now, and first I want to talk about the power of ideas. How powerful really are ideas? We've spoken about this a number of times, and I still want to really, I want to go a bit deeper in this discourse. And the first thing I want to mention is that there's really nothing as powerful as an idea. All that we see and are yet to see are product of ideas and will be product of ideas. Everything, the houses we live in, the vehicles we drive, the computers we work with, the schools we go to, the business organization that we own or that we work with are products of ideas. And as a matter of fact, the most powerful thing in the world is an idea. Ideas create governments, they create institutions. As a matter of fact, the most popular form of government that we have in our current world, democracy, is actually a product of ideas, which a few individuals were turning around in their mind until it became what it is at the moment. And to that extent, the other forms of government that we have also seen in the past are also products of ideas. So I would like us to really give a good thought to this, and as we progress in this discourse. The other thing is that everything begins as an idea, including creation itself. Our very world is an idea in itself. Everything that we create is in fact a product of idea. Ideas are seeds of creative power. In other words, you have to look at ideas the way we look at seeds that we plant on our farms, on our farmlands. Everything that we plant They look very minute at the beginning, but when we put them in soil, they begin to transform, they begin to change due to the effect of natural factors, and we see the fruit, we see the trees, and so on. So ideas themselves are actually seeds of creative power. Ideas are powerful, and they do in fact become mighty buildings, they become mighty organizations, they become mighty governments, they become they actually change and impact society. Good or bad, ideas have that much power to create and to, whether tangible or intangible things in our lives. An idea has the same power as a seed. You think about it. You put in a seed which looks whatever it is, just maybe roundish or whatever it is, and before you know it, that becomes a tree that we see. As a matter of fact, in the biological sense, you can look at idea as a germ that you plant, which brings about conception, and before you know it, a child is delivered. So an idea is, though it may be small at its conception, it's very potent and has the capacity to, create new forms of life. An idea or ideas are the lowest denominations or denominators of life. Simply put, ideas begin everything. At the base of everything that we see is simply the concept of idea. And we also say that an idea is a divine seed that can be cultivated to create a new world. In other words, whatever the state of anyone at this point, the transformation that will be seen will begin with an idea. So it's a divine seed, and in this context, sometimes an idea comes into mind, and by the time you act on that idea, it actually brings about a totally new experience. So ideas indeed are divine seeds that can be cultivated. The word cultivation is very key in that sense, that it can be worked on. If the idea is not worked on, it's simply just that. It's just an idea lying dormant, even though it has so much potential power, but it requires investment of time, of action to create a totally different world. And as a matter of fact, all of the created world began as the seed of idea. So let's put that at the back of our mind as we um, progress in this discourse. So what then is an idea? I mean, there are many thoughts that we will have seen over time. As a matter of fact, ideas are as old as the existence of man on the planet. But if you think about people who worked on ideas, wrote about ideas, the early philosophers, if you go as far back as the Greek philosophers, the likes of Plato, Pythagoras, um, Archimedes, Aristotle, these guys worked on um, ideas in terms of documenting ideas, really thinking about it and putting in a informal text. And we will see that a lot has been done. There are a lot of definitions about ideas. In fact, some say that ideas are just nothing but images in the mind. People who do neuroscience will probably say that ideas are like either distorted or organized forms or movements of thought of patterns in of neurotic activities in the mind. So a lot could be said about idea, but we'll keep it as simply as we can in this context. And the first thing I like to say that an idea is a captured thought. In other words, it's a thought that can be, as it were, concretized, that has been defined in the mind. So we say an idea is a captured thought. You might be wondering why we're talking about ideas when we're talking about the biblical philosophy of leadership. And the key word I want to highlight there is that word philosophy. And when you talk about philosophy, you're talking about it beginning first and foremost as an idea. So, and that's why we're talking about this, to go as far as possible to the granular extent of discussing philosophy and see how impactful this really is. So, an idea is a captured thought. An idea is a conceived thought. Think about the concept of pollination. So you have the flower that's just uh, budding, and then you see an agent of pollination coming across and bringing about the act of pollination. So, and then something begins to happen immediately. So you say that an idea, therefore, is a conceived thought. But a thought itself is an unspoken word. It's a silent word. It exists only in the realm of the mind, but yet unspoken. A word, therefore, simply is an exposed thought. So when you have a thought and you then go ahead to express it, then I know, exactly what you have in mind. So, throughout the day, there are many thoughts that run through our minds, but no one can exactly know what the specific thing that you have in mind unless you expose it through words. Now, a speech is the exposition of a thought. In other words, we talk about a word. A word comes about when we put it through the mechanism of speech. A word is a manifested thought, a captured idea. In other words, for you to say something concretely, it must have been in to some degree, concretized, put through a particular pattern and expressed in through sounds or other mediums. And you now see why that, as a matter of fact, as a man thinks, so is the man. So I do not know what a man is thinking unless I hear his word. But that word isn't the origin. That word came about as a thought. That thought being a silent word. And as a matter of fact, that thought is actually a conceived idea in the mind. So it does mean, therefore, that whether the man speaks or not, whatever is in his mind, that's exactly what a man is. So if the man thinks of a thing of beauty, well, the man must be tending towards beauty. Is his thought. Thought, therefore, are more important than belief, speech, or action, because you can, you can think about that deeply. You can believe something, and then your thoughts are different. You can believe that um, it's right to do good, but in the mind, you can think about something entirely different. You may not exactly act according to your belief. So, but the thought is whatever you think about, that's exactly the state of the man, which may be utterly different from beliefs, from what the man speaks or the woman speaks, and may utterly be different from action. And so, when the thought is contrary to belief, then we have a contradiction. So you have two people in the body. There's a different belief system, but then the thought, what the man is thinking about, is perhaps different. And of course, the man can follow that through in speech or through action. We'll talk a bit more about idea. We're talking about the biblical philosophy of leadership. And so I'm going to tend more towards biblical concept. Now, the word idea from biblical point of view begins with the letter I, which is the same thing as El, E-L, which in Hebrew terms uh, means God. And this will bring it to light. You will have heard a few things in scriptures that will say, I am. As a matter of fact, when God was going to be reintroduced back to the Jewish nation, having passed through their experience in Egypt, the first introduction that God brought to the man Moses was to say, look, I am is the one sending you. And he's saying, look, this is me. I am. And as a matter of fact, theologians or historians, they have it written down that the word is written, I am dash dash dash, meaning um, I am whatever you require me to be. That same word, I am, is what you have in French, which is the word d'être, which means to be, the ability to be. And what God was simply telling Moses is that I am what you need me to be when you need me to be it. In other words, I'm capable of so many things. I am the basis of everything. I am the idea behind all things. And I can be whatever you need me to be whenever you need me to be it. Another concept we want to look at when you're talking about the idea is logos, which is also another way of expressing thought. But then the difference between the key thing about logos is that logos is simply a written thought. It's thought that's expressed in words. And so, if you are to read a place in Scripture that in John chapter 1 from verse 1, which says, "In the beginning was the Word," you can read it in a different way to say, "In the beginning was the expressed thought." In other words, you have no idea what God had in mind until He spoke, until His idea, which are conceived thought, became spoken words or written words. And in this context, in Jesus' body was simply God's expressed thought, because He said, "And the Word became flesh and dwell amongst us." I would just encourage you to follow me in this line of thought because I'm going somewhere. So when you see Jesus, therefore, you're simply saying God's thoughts on two legs. It was simply God's thought expressed, which means whatever God thought about, just look at Jesus or listen to Jesus and you understand what He has in mind. So everything therefore begins with the I. In other words, that is God Himself saying, I. Whatever you say, whatever you need me to be, that's where I am. So I am the origin or the source of anything, any expressed idea or anything that you need me to be. So it's just saying that, look, whatever you need from me, I personally, I will be the expression of that matter or that concept or that being. So there's something that you will see, you probably notice in scriptures, when after Jesus has spoken about the law that was handed down through Moses, it will say, "You have heard it said that maybe an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you." In other words, the same I that spoke to Moses, saying, "Look, I am whatever you need me to be," is saying, "Look, let me tell you the real import of the laws that has been handed out to you. I have not actually come to destroy those laws. Those laws, I've come to fulfill them." So he says, "You've had this written down, but let me give you what the thought behind those written expression of law actually are." So you say, "You have had it said so, so, and so, but I say to you that this is exactly the thought behind that written word." And as a matter of fact, for people who know a bit about the courts of law, there is something that's called the spirit of the law, which is different from the written law, which is different from the codification of the law. The spirit of the law is the intent of the law. It's what was intended when that law was enacted. And so that's exactly what, "but I say to you," that's what it alludes to. That let me give you not just the statement of the law, but the intent or the precept of the law. All right, it's going to get a bit more interesting now. Now we've spoken about idea. Then, when an idea becomes an established thought, there's a word we use for it. We call it ideology. It becomes an ideology. In other words, that thought is not just something that's just flying about. Is forming into a concept, an established thought. Now, the world that we have is actually run by established thoughts or by ideology. An established thought actually would be something that akin to what we call concept. When you put a thought together and you put an idea together to form, to put it in an organized form, an established form. So you call it a concept or ideology. Now, all forms of government and education that we have are ideologies. Talk about whatever causes it, philosophy, biology, mathematics, English, all those things, they're actually ideologies. They are established thoughts. Our governments, for people who are in communist environments or democracies, these are ideologies, thoughts which were established and were properly organized. The world, as a matter of fact, is actually being run by dead men's ideas, because all that we read in mathematics, for the most part, are things that the ancient people worked on. And I mean, credit to them, those things are still helping our world. So they are things that really control our world. So the world is indeed run by dead men's idea. Well, I will mention some of them. The man Isaac Newton. We know Albert Einstein. We know Socrates. We know Plato. As a matter of fact, now as I mentioned the other time, the word democracy actually came about by the works of the likes of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They formed the idea. They put it into what we call established thought or ideology, established concepts, and these things were written down and then were handed down through the generations. Now, God himself also speaks through ideas. Just like the ideas of dead men actually run the world as we have it, God himself speaks through ideas. And as a matter of fact, he prefers to speak through ideas. Some folks expect that when you're talking about God, we expect him to speak loudly and clearly from his heavens. But not quite so. God prefers to speak through the mind. I'll give you an idea, just to establish this line of thinking. Look at from biblical standpoint. When you look at Adam, the first man that was created, you remember that there was one thing that was said, and God said that God brought every animal to him for Adam to name. There was no record of God suggesting what those animals would be called. Why? God simply thought through to Adam. In other words, Adam's thought were God's thought, so there was no need to speak to Adam. He just simply thought through him. Whatever God thought, that was exactly what Adam thought. And so he would name the animals exactly what God would have named them. That was exactly why there was no argument. God wasn't saying, no, well, call lion tiger or call tiger donkey, simply because his thought was aligned with God's thought. So God, in fact, speaks through ideas. Let me give another concept that we see around us. Many of us have these transistor radios, and you find out that when you tune your transistor radio to 93.75, you get a particular channel, and somebody at the other end of the city who tunes to exactly the same radio frequency gets exactly the same transmission. Why? It's a transmission of ideas, of thoughts. So God, as a matter of fact, speaks through ideas. That's why sometimes you find that you are thinking about something, and somebody who's close by to you is also thinking about the same thing. It's synchronization of thought. So God, as a matter of fact, speaks through ideas, and that is his preferred way of speaking to people. When God has to shout to someone, it's most likely that the person wasn't listening. As a matter of fact, sometimes you call your best friend because your thoughts are so aligned. When you're thinking about something, he's also, or she also is thinking about the same thing. It's similarity of thought. So God likes to think to us. It speaks loudly only to rebellious people, people who just not listen. It shouts at them. All right, that's just something to consider. Now we move from ideology to philosophy. Now, when we're talking about things like this, ideas, ideology, philosophy, most people who have religious backgrounds think, no, don't talk about this sort of thing. That belong to people who study psychology. Well, nothing could be further from the truth because everyone being on the planet, 7.2 billion people of them, have different ideologies or some particular ideologies, and they have some kind of philosophy in their minds or in their lives. As long as you have an idea in your mind and that idea becomes established, then you have an ideology. And if that ideology, is formed in your mind and becomes a theory, then you have a belief system. So everybody has a way or has something that they believe. Some people believe that if they go out in the sun and they hit the right foot on a stone, well, that day they're gonna win some amount of money. It's a way of thinking, it's a way of believing. So everybody has that. And let's not for any moment think, oh, this should be confined into the psychology class. No, these are things, if we want to really engage with the world intelligibly, we must understand that everybody has a philosophy. And that philosophy is born when the ideology becomes a theory. A theory meaning it's now an established ideology, and to the extent that it becomes a belief system. Now, it then follows that if your ideas are wrong, then as a consequence, your beliefs will be wrong. I'm coming at something. So it then means that the source of your ideas influences the quality of your beliefs. Let's take a thought to look at the kind of the world we live in now. There are different ideologies running different parts of the world. And some of those ideologies are creating, in some parts, very serious troubles. Why? Because there was an idea which those people or various individuals believed to be correct. And those things have become their belief system. And for whatever reason, good or bad, those things are actually influencing the world, are changing societies, changing countries. And I don't need to say too much. You only need to think about just think around the world as we are, and you see the impact of belief systems, of philosophies. So that's why I say that the source of your ideas becomes the quality of your belief. Now, it also follows that who you listen to influences your belief. And that's why you have words like brainwashing, because if someone manages to transfer his thoughts to your mind, the person begins to influence your beliefs. And this happens to us right from childhood. The parents say certain things to their children from certain ages, and the children begin to do exactly those things. So you look at children like clean slates that parents and society write on from time to time. And this is literally true, because as a matter of fact, every one of us on this webinar are exactly that. We are people who have been written on by various influences. When a theory becomes a conviction, only then does it become a philosophy. You say, I was speaking to a man in the last 2 weeks, and he said, I don't really want to do X, Y, because everybody has his own philosophy. He said it in a very casual sense, but you could tell that he was simply saying that he has his own way of life. He has his own world view, a way he views his own world. And that's literally true, because that is exactly the truth about everyone of us. What then is philosophy? The word philosophy comes from two words. which is philo and osophy. The word philo is the word where you find the word friendship, where it comes from. The kind of love that comes from that birth friendship. So it simply means to love, and what osophy means to know. So philosophy then is intimacy or being in love with one's own thoughts. We can put it as simply as that. Now, philosophies are thoughts which you are in love with and you believe. You absolutely believe that those things are true. They are your belief systems. They are the way you view the world. You see everything through that philosophy. For example, you know, if you look at every part of our lives, um, you can see the example, the impact of philosophies. You know, things that people absolutely believe in, and it takes, you know, if you like, almost a miracle for them to change that belief system. Now, you can begin to see how that one philosophy, therefore, affects its psychology or what we call mentality. So, belief systems control entire behavior. Some people believe that certain kind of people that come from some part of the world, are just not capable of greatness. They're not capable of doing anything good. So that influences their behavior. It influences how they organize their organizations, and so on and so forth. So philosophy is a system of beliefs. Philosophy is simply a system of beliefs. And when you talk about system, you're saying that everything is interconnected. One thing leads to the other to form a whole piece. Philosophy is simply the way we think, is our mentality. Our philosophies are, in fact, our lives. Because the way we think dictates how we approach the world, how we approach various things, how we approach families, how we approach jobs. For example, if someone had a difficult, say, childhood, the person begins to think, okay, well, I have to compensate for that with my children. So that somehow may form the philosophy. You know, some people might say, "Oh no, I'm not dealing with this kind of people because they are dubious." It becomes a way we think and view a world, which in fact dictate our lives. So it is more important, therefore, to check your thought life than your talk life. Why? We have seen, as we've carefully established it, that what your philosophy is, or what your mentality is, actually stems from your thoughts. Don't forget, thoughts are unspoken words. They're just the ideas that are conceived in our minds. So what you think is more important than what you say. So transformation of thought, therefore, is or leads to transformation of life. So if you can transform your thought, then you can say that someone begins to transform his life. Idea is therefore the source, the bedrock of philosophy. From the way we began, where we talk about ideas and so on, you can see that ideas are the sources, or is the source of philosophy. And the source of our ideas determines the quality of our lives. I'm laying some foundations here because we're going to build a lot on this as we progress in the coming weeks. So it follows then that wrong idea will literally birth wrong philosophy. So if someone has a philosophy that you disagree with, the suggestion is you don't need to fight that person. You don't need to fight that philosophy. Just check the source of the ideas. I would rather say, okay, how did you come to view this matter this way? How did you come to this conclusion? And by the time the person talks through all of his conclusion, then you can begin to unpick what exactly the ideas are that have formed that philosophy. So, this may help in having balanced and productive arguments. Now, we've said a lot about idea that lead into philosophy. Now let's look at what the original idea is from biblical standpoint. Jesus said, he said something. He said, look, the words that I speak to you, they are spirit and life. But I've put in, for emphasis, a text there. The words that I speak to you, they are spirit and they give you life. In other words, the life that you have is exactly the quality of the words that I have spoken to you. The spirit simply there means it has energy, it has power, it has capacity to produce your quality of life. It's saying, in fact, that my words have the capacity to create the life that you desire, the life that you live. So, whatever Jesus said was not an opinion of himself, but God's idea about everything. Don't forget, that's why we talk about Genesis 1, John 1 and verse 5, 1 to 5, that in the beginning was the Word. Word being an express thought. And the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. So, everything therefore that Jesus said is God's idea about everything. Jesus spoke with absolute authority. Why? Because he believed he had the right ideas. He had the right ideas about everything. We live in a world where we talk about relative truths, that there's no right and there's no wrong. Everything is relative depending on your perspective, and and that talks about accommodating various ideas and thoughts. That's fine, as long as we're playing amongst ourselves. But we're talking about an authority which supersedes human's authority. And that's why everything that Jesus spoke, it stems from that word that I spoke earlier. I am. I am is speaking to you. And he will say things like this: you have heard it say XYZ, but I say to you. In other words, he is not giving us a subjective view on any matter. Rather, is giving us the objective view, the definitive view about anything that we're considering. So that's why he could speak with absolute authority. And in his days, it was a problem to the established order, because they think, how dare you? How do you speak this way? Who gives you the right to speak this way? But they were forgetting that the outer feature was hiding someone who was standing within. And the I am, was actually speaking through the lips of Jesus. So it is easy to live out what we believe in. Why? As a man is in his heart, so is the man. We live out exactly what we believe in. So now, that's why sometimes also people see who we are before they hear who we are. So we don't really need to tell people that we are so and so. The best proof, they say the proof of the pudding is in the eating, or something like that. So which means people see through who we are than whatever we claim to be. So it's better for people to see and say, right, I think you're a good person, than to say, I'm a good person. Why? We simply live out what we believe in and who we are inside. All right, that's just by the way. Now, what goes into the mind controls the life. It still goes back to the first statement that I wrote there, that the words that I speak to you, they are spirit. They have the life-giving force to create the life that you lead. So what goes into the mind, therefore, controls the life, and you become what you continually hear. And that's why when you speak to someone from time to time, you say the same thing through repetition. As a matter of fact, I remember my primary school days. Most of the things that I learned were through repetitions. The teacher will come in and say the same thing to us from time to time, and you hear it, and you hear it, and you turn it around in your mind. And as a matter of fact, you don't even think about them. You just repeat them. And we were being written on, as it were. So we become what we continually hear. And as a matter of fact, we only have faith for what we have. In other words, we only believe what you hear. The reverse is also true. You cannot believe what you do not hear. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So I talk about theology, therefore. When I talk about theology, these words have assumed some specific meanings in our minds. But just hear me out on this. Now we're talking about theology, and we're saying that faith, or what you believe, comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. In other words, the way to have the right faith is first to hear the word of God, because theology is actually the result of ideology. Whatever you believe about God, that's exactly your idea about him. The word theo means God, or something relating to God. You can check that up in the dictionary. It means something relating to God. And the word ology means a branch of knowledge or study, a subject of knowledge. So when you say theology, therefore, it means knowledge of God, simply put, or the study of God. God being the subject now. So theology is simply the study of God. Now, don't forget that we're talking about God saying, introducing himself as I am. So theology is simply I am logy. You're just simply studying about the I am, or you are studying about El, which is the Hebrew word for God. So you can say theology is I logy, if you like, or El logy. That's just probably perhaps a play with words, but these are very important. So how you think depends on your ideology of God. Some people in their mind see God as someone who is brutal, who is uncompromising, judgmental, and is ready to inflict pain at the, at any given opportunity. And so all of their lives are shaped and controlled by fear. And as a matter of fact, they convey fear in all of their speech to other people. Some people are a bit more liberal in their minds and think, no, God will just simply overlook it. And so they are very liberal in their views of God. Well, whichever is right or not right. But the bottom line is how you think depends on your ideology of God. And your thinking colors your belief. Because, there was an experiment that was done where this man was wearing a rose tinted glass. And so someone brought to him a white piece of cloth. And all he could see was a lovely rose piece of cloth. Now, it doesn't matter what the color of the cloth is, but because of the spectacle that this person was wearing, she only could see a rose. And as a matter of fact, rose happens to be her best color. So, so you can't really convince her beyond that. All she could say is that you are holding in your hand a rose, a lovely rose piece of cloth. Why? Because your thinking colors your belief. It colors your knowledge and your study of God. And as a matter of fact, most people tend to impose their idea on their study of God. You wonder what happened during the time of apartheid. And you know what apartheid is, which we've probably seen the film, or we've heard about it in our various studies and interactions. But I will say I will just give a brief recap of how that system came about. This was over 50 years ago now, or thereabout, and it was at a time when the government of South Africa wanted to introduce a new kind of government or governance, which is to say that, well, we need to divide the society according to uh, physical or observable traits of the people in the land. In other words, if you look in a particular way, you belong to a particular segment of society. And what they did was, they've already written a policy, but the policy would not really fly because the church of the day may not exactly support it. So they needed a theological backing to the policy, to the social policy. And what they did, therefore, was to go to the what they call the Dutch Reformed Church of the day in South Africa to say, well, we need, because we believe this thing so strongly, and we need a theological backing to this idea. And guess what? These guys took the page of scripture in Genesis 1, 26, 27, and 28, and they said, right, he said, and God said, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air. So, everybody knows what fish is. Everybody knows what birds are. And over the beast of the field. And over everything that moves and creeps upon the face of the earth. Now, somehow in their theology, they were able to interpret beast and the things that moves upon the face of the earth as the dark-skinned people of South Africa. And thus, there was a theological justification for that system of apartheid. And they were able to then, implement this. And so there was that segregation. So now this same idea was taught to young people in schools and so on. So a young child of 5, 6, 7 grew up learning that. So when he grew up to about age 18, he has had that all his life through repetition. So he doesn't think any differently, because it's not really his fault, but that is what he's been taught. That's the idea that's been communicated to his mind. So he just doesn't see these other beings that move and creep upon the face of the earth, these other beast-like individuals, as being equal to him. And so, even so, when you see them at work, you can't think of making them managers or directors or coming to the boardroom, because they are just not equal to me. And so I'm just trying to highlight the power of theology, because whatever you believe about God, your ideology actually influences your thought, your knowledge of God. So that was how that belief system was established, enshrined in law, and became a force until it began to break down. And as a matter of fact, you wonder why the system in South Africa is still not really changed. It's still because somehow that ideology is still in the mind. So it looks to me like both the people who are being subjugated and the people who are, inflicting the art are both victims, because some of them didn't really create that law, but they've been taught that law. And the people who are also on the receiving end have been experiencing it. So you could see how difficult that situation is. So this is just one instance to talk about the power of theology. And so the import of this is for us to look at what exactly is our thinking system, our thought life, our philosophy, our ideology, because that will influence our thinking about God. So therefore, let's talk about transformational mind. An idea can be removed legislatively, but still remains in the mind. In other words, legislation cannot remove an idea from the mind. You can remove from the written law, but you need a different process to remove it from the mind. You cannot legislate transformation of mind as a result. Why? The mind has its own environment, which could be totally shielded from the legislative process. That's why societies, we look around the world, we hear a lot of things that happen in various environments, even in developed environments, and you still wonder, why is this thing happening? Well, it doesn't matter what's been put in law. Until the mind is transformed, that matter is still there. It's still an issue. Now, transformation of mind only comes through renewing of the idea that dominates the mind, or the idea that dominates the thinking. So you can imagine why Paul the fourth century um, apostle, wrote that, therefore, be ye renewed by the transformation of your mind. In other words, for you to have a changed life, you have to change the content of your mind. Right? So transformation requires conversion of the theology. Transformation of theology itself is transformation of the philosophy in the mind. Transformation of philosophy turns out to be transformation of mentality. Transformation of mentality will therefore impart the transformation of your ideology. And transformation of your ideology is the conversion of the dominant idea in the mind. And this is actually how societies change. Because when your ideas begin to change, there was a time when it was believed that the world was flat. Well, we are probably coming back to that now through the works of one of my respected writers. But there was a time when it was believed that the world was flat and that the um, the Earth was the center of the universe, that sort of thing. And when Galileo began to, bring about to do his experiment, it was seen as an outlaw because he was challenging the dominant thought in the society at the time. And so he was punished and all that. So you can see the power of ideologies, that unless the dominant idea in the mind changes, there is actually no transformation in life and in society. Now, I'm bringing this to a head, but all of this is simply just laying the foundation for what we're going to be discussing as we progress. Because we are talking about how we bring about a different kind of leadership that is compassionate, that brings about true transformation, that brings about benefit, good benefit in life and in society. Now, modern leadership theories are grounded in Greek philosophies. I've mentioned this before. And why do I say that? We have to look at what the Greeks believed. The Greeks had a way, and I'm talking in ancient times. I'm not talking about the Greek of today. The Greek of in ancient times, they had these views about the society that birth traits, birth privileges, and charisma were essential factor in determining who could be a leader in the society. So if you have flat nose, for example, you have dark skin, you have nappy head, or kind of a woolly kind of head, then you belong to a particular class in society. Now, but if you have different other features, maybe sharp nose, pointed nose, blue eyes, thin lips, then you belong to a different strata. And then they also believe that if you are eloquent, you are, a very cheerful individual, you could speak, you could express your thought, you could really move people, you could get people to do things. In other words, if you have extrovertive, if you're an extrovert, so to say, then you are a leadership material. Or if you are born into the privileged um, families and so on and so forth, then you are a leadership candidate. As a matter of fact, one of the words they use is charisma, which is a word that says that you are being gifted by the God. So you hear things like Hercules, you hear the things like Hercules, and so on and so forth. And these are guys, these are individuals who are gifted by the gods. The gods have chosen them, and they are automatically leaders. So society was defined along those lines, and so if you don't have those traits, you know exactly where you belong in society. Okay, now, but Jesus thought differently. Don't forget that Jesus was born at a time when the whole of the Jewish nation were actually under the rule of the Roman Empire. So he was born in that kind of a time. So naturally, it should have been seen as a dog or as a slave. But his philosophy was different. Don't forget, Jesus was not just was just a mean man. He was a man who was deity incarnated, deity incarnate. So his philosophy was different, and his already original idea is something that is in the mind of God. And I was saying to that time that the whatever Jesus expressed was God's thoughts. Jesus was God thinking on two legs. So the original idea that he had was exactly what was in the mind of the author of life. And we can talk about a few of those. Jesus believed that every one individual was born to lead. And as a matter of fact, he actually came to lead them back into their leadership status. You hear things that say that the leaders of this world dominate you, they use you, but it shall not be so among you. Let him that will be the leader be as the one who serves. So it was a totally different philosophy. Rather than, right, these guys belong to a lower class and so they should serve us. He was saying that the ones that should be the leader must be the one who serves. Now, this is why I always say, I don't know if I've said it a few times, but I will recount it that these sessions that we have is actually for every one person that you can think about. This is for the housewife. This is for the nursery school teacher. This is for the accountant. This is for the engineer. This is for the students. This is for anyone you can think about. As a matter of fact, this is for the man under the bridge. Because when that man is educated back into himself, then suddenly the mind changes. His thinking about himself changes. The philosophy of Jesus, which is the biblical viewpoint, is that the purpose of leadership is to lead other people into their leadership. It's not exactly to lead them, as it were, and make them followers. It's to lead them to finding their leadership. Making leaders of men is actually better than maintaining followers, because followership must lead into something other than followership. If I'm following you, you should lead me not into followership, but into leadership. And that's why Jesus said, hey, gentlemen, follow me, and I will make you to become fishers of men. In other words, it was not into perpetuating followers. His whole aim was to lead them as they followed him into becoming leaders themselves who can fish out men, who can help other men to find themselves. And that is a foundational concept, principle in this platform, on this platform, that everyone here is in the business of following the master leader, not me, I'm talking about Jesus, and helping other people to find their leadership gift and to become the leaders that they are born to be. And that leadership that we're talking about is not in amassing people and telling them what to do. No, it's in helping them to find what they were born to do, and providing the environment where they can exercise and become confident in the exercise of that leadership gift. That is really the purpose of this whole platform. Jesus had an idea about leadership. One day, I think I've told this story before. There were these two brothers who came to Jesus, and they were going to lobby him, and they used a very cunning method. What they did was to sponsor their mom, and they said, look, mom, can you please speak to this guy for us and get him to, get us into lovely positions in his government. Now, when the woman came to Jesus, said, master, please, would you allow my sons to take positions of authority in your government? That sounds like what most people do, which is jockeying for position. And it's like when you're in the office, you kind of do a few things for the boss so that the man can think about you when a promotion exercise is meant to be put in place, or you stay back in the office all so that you can curry favor and set yourself up for um, for for benefit. Some people call it smartness, being able to play the game. Well, well, but let's think about this. Jesus believed that everyone is a leader. So to finish off my story, this they came to Jesus and said, well, and just threw a challenge to them and said, what do you think? Do you reckon that you can actually sacrifice, put in the shift, the required sacrifice to take up this position? And they said, yeah, we can. Well, I just said, don't speak too quickly, because even if you can put in the shift, the required sacrifice, it is still not for me to determine who gets what position. And I was saying that to this extent that the leadership position are actually preset positions. And that's the concept I want to leave us with tonight. Because you just believe that everyone is a leader and that leadership positions are preset. They are not things that you lobby for. As a matter of fact, it talks about a predetermined positions. In other words, the assignment that everyone was born to solve was predetermined, which was what necessitated that individual. Some people say that you can make your own life, you can determine your own destiny. That's fine, but I think that's about as true as a fish determining its destiny, as it were. Because if a fish is a freshwater fish and was designed to live in fresh water, well, that fish will be in trouble if it decides to chart a different destiny that will lead into a saltwater environment. It will dry up. So the leadership position we're talking about are preset leadership position, which were determined before birth. It was not determined at birth. It was not determined after birth. They were determined before birth. So they are preset positions, and that's why I said this is applicable to the housewife, to the nursing mother, to to the 5-year-old, to the student in school, because leadership positions, from Jesus' perspective, are preset positions. Leadership positions are places of authority set by the Father God, for each one. This is very important. Jesus wanted everyone to follow him into his and her leadership position. That's why I said, look, follow me. I will help you to become fishers of men. As a matter of fact, he made a statement. He was saying, guys, believe in me. Because in my father's house, and then the word house there is in the context of household, which is in the family business, there are many positions of authority. That's what we're saying. He said, in my father's house, there are many mansions there. That word mansion is not this mansion like we know it. It's not 3 bedroom, 3 bed duplex or a gigantic edifice. No. The word mansion is the Hebrew word that is translated as the positions of authority or leadership positions. For people who study the Bible, you remember the place I was written in the book of Jude that said that for the angels that did not keep their estate, they have been reserved unto everlasting damnation in chains. That's exactly what that is saying. Another translation says that for the angels that did not keep their formal estate, or another one says their leadership, their positions of authority. So Jesus wanted to lead everyone back into their positions of authority. And I give you this example. You have your pen. I think I used this example recently. You have your pen and you have ink in the pen. Now, everything is all right as long as the ink remains in your pen. But if that ink leaves your pen and finds its way on your white color shirt or white colored skirt or gown, what happens? that ink has left its allotted place and it's become a blot. It's become a stain. It has left its position of functioning. It has left its position of leadership gift. So what Jesus wants to do is to lead everyone into his or her leadership position of authority and function, because your authority actually comes to light through the area that you function best at. And that is the concept I want us to go with tonight. Man's position was set before he fell. Everyone man. As a matter of fact, man's position is let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the beasts of the field, and everything that moves and creeps upon the face of the earth, not over another human. And that position was set before man was created, as a matter of fact, and before he fell. And it still hasn't changed the mind of God. So out of the spot, the man becomes a spot. Simply means, just like the ink that is out of its in the pen, elsewhere it becomes a spot. You say it has a spot on his dress. As a matter of fact, if you're eating a very lovely meal and somehow the spoon or the fork misses the mouth and the piece of morsel drops on your clothes and you are dressed ready for your interview, you know exactly how you feel. That food has gone into out of position and has become a spot on your dress. As a matter of fact, a man out of position is a despot. Is a man out of position, out of authorized position of functioning. So the greatest assignment of leadership, therefore, is getting people into their service spots, into the environment where they serve best, into their positions of leadership service. And this is a concept that runs through the scripture as you read everything that Jesus said. And that's why I was saying that to really understand leadership, we must understand the mind of Jesus. And our minds begin to transform as we come to terms with the ideology of Jesus, with the mind of Jesus. So you're wondering, is it easy to know God's mind? Well, very easy as you study Jesus. Because why? He is the expressed thought of God. Is the expressed idea of God. So you can see, where we're coming from now, how that it begins to make sense. We started from talking about ideas and ideology, mentality, philosophy, theology, and begin to see, contrasting that with the ideas of God, the original idea of God, being Jesus himself. And that's why we call this the biblical philosophy of leadership. We're going to continue from here the next time, and it's going to take us on a very, very important journey. We're going to build a lot on this. As a matter of fact, the intention is to use the very materials that Dr. Miles gave to us and commissioned us to really use in teaching this subject. So please stay tuned and please invite people to the next one. It's going to be really, really exciting. Very, very exciting. It's going to be original materials, which I didn't write, which were handed to me. And I trust that it will be a very great time as we continue to transform together. So thank you, leaders, for coming together. And I was saying before at the start of this broadcast that I hope that everyone has started to really work on their mission and vision statement, because that's very important. What we're trying to do is not just to talk, but to transform that, to put that through a process of what we can work on. We want to act on all of this by first and foremost writing a statement of our purpose, because that's exactly where leadership begins. And putting the vision that we see that's being shown to us in our minds, putting all of those on paper, and writing a mission that defines what we're about. And then going from there to write a plan of execution of what we see, and then begin to think about who is best placed to work this with me. Because no man, leadership can never be fulfilled alone. As a matter of fact, leadership is not just given to a generation, because true leadership is transgenerational. So you're thinking about who works this with me? Who can I work with to bring this to bear? So think about it. Let's say you are thinking about a school. You're going to think, what kind of team do I need to bring this school to reality? And then you're then thinking about um, what kind of value system are we all going to subscribe to, both personally and as an organization, as a team of leaders? What kind of um, value system are we going to subscribe to that will protect the delivery of our mandate? And of course, you begin to then go on to execute that plan, trusting that the Lord will bring the supplies to you, will bring you the needed resources. And I've just summarized what we did over the last 2 weeks, but it starts with putting down everything that we have in our mind. Because if you don't, those things they begin to seep away. They begin to lose the real value, the bite that we had when they first came to our mind. So that's why we have to do that. And it's about taking your leadership kit. As a matter of fact, let me say this in closing. Don't expect God to come show up to you and speak to you in a dream, in a vision. That is good, and God has the prerogative to do that. He can choose to do that. But begin to think about the ideas that has been on your mind right from childhood. Now, think about it. It may have been looking at like a balloon dream, but well, suck out the air out of it and replace that air with action, because it is actions that translate dreams into realities. As a matter of fact, young men do see vision because they still have the energy to work on them. Old men dream dreams because even though the dream is valid, the energy is no more to get them done. But you still have the energy. We are young people. I'm hoping. I don't know our ages, but I believe that we are young people who still have the capacity to translate the idea into tangible reality. If we don't, then people will be justified in calling them balloon dreams because we have just not acted on them. So a balloon dream is a dream that is lacking action. So let's translate them into action. And I believe that the world needs the service that you are giving to give to. As a matter of fact, I need your leadership service because it's not for you. It was given for you to deliver to us, including me. God bless you as you continue to develop. The broadcast will be replayed. If you want, you can always go back to look at it. And I trust that you continue to grow. And until next time, keep growing as a leader and keep changing your world because you are a leader. I believe it, and I know you believe it too. Bye, and God bless.